In this world, a portion of humanity has been wiped out by a virus, and some of the survivors are now serving as blood bags for vampires who have taken over. In the middle of this apocalyptic nightmare, we meet Yuichiro Hyakuya, a weakling who was abandoned by his parents for being such a pathetic offspring. Our stubborn and hot-headed MC was sent to live in an orphanage where he found a new family of fellow rejects. Now that the vampires have taken over, he and the other kids in the orphanage are gathered to serve as livestock for them. Our story with a peaceful night in a city filled with lights. People walk through the chilly streets, but suddenly, chaos erupts. One by one, adults collapse, gasping for breath. Planes crash, cars veer out of control as they isekai people. Society falls apart in an instant as a deadly virus wipes out the adult population. In the aftermath of the disaster, Cruel Tepes, the third progenitor of the vampires, leads her faction through the devastated streets of Tokyo, overseeing the New World Order. Amidst this chaos, a group of children, led by our righteous side character Mikaela Hyakuya, run through the streets, terrified. Yuichiro Hyakuya, the black-haired Sasuke clone, witnesses the collapse firsthand as adults die all around them, including a man right in front of his eyes. The children flee, not fully understanding the situation. The voice of an announcement echoes through the streets, explaining that humanity's own foolishness led to the virus and the downfall of civilization. The broadcast warns that only children under 13 have been spared. These children are now under the protection of the vampires. Mika and Yu arrive at their orphanage, only to find the director lying dead. The grim realization sinks in as the vampires make their move. Suddenly, a vampire shatters a window and enters, followed by others who then take the children. 4 years later, our story shifts to the city of Sanguinem. The surviving children, including Mika and Yu, are now used as vampire livestock, routinely having their blood drained by the vampires like living Pepsi factories. Yu, who is the writer made to be annoyingly stubborn, refuses to drink the liquid in the bags they are provided, while Mika tries to convince him to comply and survive. Mika, who probably thinks this is a Fast and Furious movie, remains hopeful that they can live as a family, but Yu rejects the idea, determined not to be treated as cattle. A pair of vampires abuse some children in front of Yu. Enraged, Yu attacks them but is quickly treated like the worthless, puny child he is. Mika tries to defuse the situation, explaining that Yu is not one of the wisest family members, but Yu refuses to back down. Just as the vampire is about to drop Yu off and isekai him to a hopefully better world, they are interrupted by the arrival of Farid Bathory, a noble vampire. Farid greets Mika warmly, offering him an invitation to his mansion, which Mika politely accepts. Yu, still defiant, remains distant, but Mika brushes it off, trying to keep them both safe. Later, Yu and Mika discuss their dire situation. Mika suggests escaping, revealing that he has stolen a gun from Farid and a map that could lead them out of the city. He also adds that he can't give his blood to the noble for free, which honestly just seems like he's selling his body. He insists they must seize the chance to escape. That night, Mika gathers the other orphans, including Akane, and they begin their dangerous journey through the underground city. The children sneak through the tunnels, barely avoiding detection by vampire guards. Finally, they see the exit and their hope rises, until Farid appears at the gate, mocking their attempt to escape. He begins carrying out the truck-kun's job and isekaiing children one by one, starting with Akane, leaving only Mika and Yu alive. In a desperate move, Mika charges at Farid with the gun, but Farid quickly overpowers him, piercing Mika's chest. Despite his injuries, Mika urges Yu to escape, but Yu is paralyzed by grief. With a final act of defiance, Mika pushes Yu away, telling him to run. Yu, covered in Mika's blood, stumbles out of the underground city as more vampires close in. Yu emerges into the snow-covered world, broken and alone. He is soon found by Gurren Ichinos and his squad, who recognize him as a survivor of the Hyakuya orphanage. Gurren offers Yu a chance to fight back against the vampires, and Yu, fueled by anger and loss, accepts. The episode ends with a time jump. 4 years later, a now 16-year-old Yu, dressed in military gear, walks through the ruins of the world above ground, ready to take his revenge. Yuichiro Hyakuya is haunted by flashbacks of his past, the memories of his family of orphans living under the vampire's rule. Despite their bleak situation, he recalls moments of happiness, but those memories always twist into nightmares, where he relives the gruesome unaliveness of his friends by the noble. 4 years have passed since that traumatic night in Sanguinem. Now 16, Yu fights a grotesque monster known as a Horseman of John in the ruins of a human city. The creature bursts through a billboard, attacking his two comrades. Despite their orders to retreat, Yu ignores them and attacks the monster's Dark Soul style. His only motivation is revenge. With one swift move, Yu kills the beast. As punishment for defying orders, Yu is suspended from the Moon Demon Company, the elite force created to exterminate vampires. His new punishment? He's forced to attend school. During class, Yu grumbles about his situation, drawing the annoyance of the teacher, who threatens him with further suspension. To this, Yu happily agrees and thanks the teacher for allowing him to leave the hellhole that is school. Just then, Shinoa Hiragi, seated behind him, pokes Yu with a note. It informs him that she's been assigned as his surveillance officer, tasked with ensuring that he behaves and, much to his dismay, makes a friend. Annoyed, Yu recalls the night he met Guren Ichinos 4 years ago. After escaping Sanguinem, Guren offered him a coat and asked Yu if he hated vampires. Yu replies and says, more than anything. Back in the present, Yu is frustrated as to why Guren hasn't let him kill any vampires yet. Class ends, and while some students head off for ice cream, Shinoa reminds Yu that this is his chance to make friends per Guren's orders. When Yu ignores her, she hands him another note from Guren. The note contains a message from Guren telling Yu that a hopeless virgin like him can never get a girlfriend annoyed. Yu crumples it and throws it on the floor, but Shinoa remains unfazed, following him to his locker. As Yu tries to shake her off, a nearby commotion draws their attention. A student named Yoichi Saotome is being bullied by Satoshi Yamanaka and his friends. They demand that Yoichi buy them snacks, under the guise of friendship. Yoichi, clearly uncomfortable, complies, but Yamanaka's cruel taunts cut deep, referring to him as little more than livestock. Yu tries to walk away, uninterested in getting involved, but Shinoa taunts him, pointing out that he'll never make friends this way. Yamanaka and his group quickly notice Yu's defiance, who offers that they fight, and in response, Yamanaka punches him in the face, sending Yu back to the Stone Ages. Yu unfortunately can't fight back, as his suspension will be extended. The next scene shows Yu begrudgingly carrying drinks, while Yoichi hauls a large bag of snacks for the bullies. Yu lashes out at Shinoa, raising a can in frustration before dropping it. Yoichi, meanwhile, opens up about why he wants to join the Moon Demon Company and tells them his sad side character story of how he wants to avenge his sister, who was killed by a vampire while protecting him. Unfortunately, Yoichi failed the entrance exam and now hopes to use Yamanaka's connections to get a second chance. This angers Yu. He calls Yoichi weak and insists that joining the army will only get him killed. Hurt, Yoichi almost starts to cry. A drink can drop from his bag of goodies for the bullies. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the city, and sirens blare as an emergency alert warns of an escaped vampire. The system urges all civilians to flee and avoid contact, as the vampire is regaining strength by drinking blood. Shinoa orders Yu and Yoichi to seek shelter while she contacts the Moon Demon Company. However, Yu refuses. Desperate to prove himself, he runs toward the danger. Ignoring Shinoa's scolding, Yu sprints through the school, retrieving his sword and a gun from his locker before confronting the vampire. The vampire, a frail girl, is already attacking a student on the teacher's desk. Her ribs are visible beneath her skin, and her eyes are sunken with hunger. Yu interrupts just before she sinks her fangs into the student, and the two begin to fight. The vampire is too fast for Yu to easily hit, and her strength is far greater than her appearance suggests. Her nails slice through the air as she lunges at him repeatedly. Meanwhile, Yamanaka the bully cowers in fear in the corner of the room like a little baby waiting for his mummy, his earlier bravado completely gone. Yu tells him to save the girl on the desk, believing him to be an army candidate, but Yamanaka shamefully admits that it is all a lie. Just as the vampire prepares to strike, Yoichi appears out of nowhere, tackling her. She swipes at Yoichi, but Yu blocks the attack and engages the vampire in a fierce duel. The vampire grabs Yu by the throat and leaps out of the classroom window, crashing through branches as they fall to the ground. Yu manages to stab her through the abdomen, but it's not enough. She taunts him, claiming she'll drink his blood and regain her full power before the Moon Demon Company arrives. Just as all hope seems lost, Guren and his squad appear. Guren, with his cursed blade, pierces the vampire's heart, killing her instantly. She dissolves into embers, leaving only her clothes behind. Shinoa arrives with the squad, much to Yu's irritation. When Yu demands to join the Moon Demon Company, Guren scoffs, saying he hates brats who don't understand teamwork. As Guren denies Yu's request, Yoichi appears on a nearby walkway, waving excitedly. In his enthusiasm, Yoichi jumps over the fence and tumbles down a slope, crashing into Yu. Both boys fall to the ground, with Yoichi hugging Yu tightly and crying in relief. Shinoa teases Guren, pointing out that Yu has finally made a friend, meaning Guren must keep his promise and let Yu join the company. Guren, shocked, doesn't argue. In a dream, Yu sees Mika and the other Hyakuya orphans, happy and alive. Mika praises Yu for finally making a friend, saying he was always too kind to live for revenge. As the vision fades, Yu cries pathetically for Mika to stay, but his voice is lost in the darkness. Yu wakes up in a hospital bed, greeted by Yoichi and Shinoa, who informs him that he and Yoichi have been accepted into the Moon Demon Company. In a restricted site, one of Yamanaka's companions, Yuji, attempts to open a room plastered with spell tags, but Yamanaka stops him before he can proceed to do so. The trio, including Shishido, begins walking away, however. The door opens slightly like a standard horror movie when Yuji looks back. Above ground on the rooftop of 2nd Shibuya High, some slice-of-life romance drama happens as Yu receives a love letter from the girl he saved from the vampire that escaped and took her hostage. He blushes like a virgin idiot while collecting the letter as she runs off before he can respond, but he pockets the letter. Shinoa has overseen the encounter and teases him that he should build a relationship, but she continues in all seriousness to explain that humanity must increase in numbers in order to survive in the world. Moving on and satisfying Yu's curiosity, Shinoa demonstrates her cursed gear, Shikama Doji, which manifests as a large scythe. It can also project a spiritual-based power that can manifest before them. Yu is amazed by it and asks Shinoa to give it to him. When she refused, Yu decided to attack her in order to test the weapon's strength. She spars with him for a few seconds before completely overwhelming him both physically and with the energy given off by the scythe. Later, Yamanaka and his remaining friend, Shishido, are chasing down Yoichi, begging like shameless pimps to become his disciples. Yu tells them to leave, then wants to know if they have the pride to beg for help from a person they used to bully until recently. Yamanaka begs because he thinks that Yoichi, who is now part of the vampire extermination unit, could save their friend Yuji, who went into the Forbidden Chamber and never came back. Shinoa replies that that action will lead to severe punishment, even the possibility of death, and tells them to give up. Regardless, they agree to help, and Yu, Shinoa, and Yoichi go to the horror movie chamber. Shinoa warns Yu not to try anything dangerous, but Yu, being the stubborn fool he is, rushes in anyway, and tries to seize the cursed axe from Yuji, who is now evidently controlled by a demon. When Yu grasps it, he suddenly finds himself back in Sanguinem with Mika, Akane, and the other orphans at the age they were then. They ask Yu to continue with their dinner, but Yu feels uneasy and confused. He says he thought they died, to which Mika and the others reply that they are dead and ask Yu to avenge them. However, Yu says that Mika would not want that, as he realizes that it is not really him, and Yu demands that the demon show its true colors and stop pretending to be his family. The deception cracks as a part of the demon contained within the weapon is seen. Yu wakes up, realizing that the demon had attempted to possess him. To Shinoa's surprise, Yu managed to expel the demon just by his sheer will. Since Yu has what it takes to handle a cursed gear, Shinoa says that she will tell Guren, and he may soon let him into the training class, even though the course has already begun. In Sanguinem, Farid, who had survived the gunshot to the head Yu gave him, struts down the hall in his girly but mostly gay manner to where he izakai'd the Hyakuya orphans. He approaches a figure dressed in the vampire soldier uniform. He reveals that Yu is being kept by the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. When Farid approaches, the figure turns and draws his sword, remaining silent while he points it at Farid's neck. The figure is revealed to be an older Mikaela Hyakuya. He glares at Farid, and his mouth opens slightly to reveal fangs. Somewhere in a ruined city inhabited by free humans controlled neither by the vampires nor the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, a horseman of John appears and attacks. One girl stumbles and falls on a face like a reckless toddler. Mikaela Hyakuya, now a vampire, steps in between them and kills the horseman quickly. The humans cheer that they now have protection from the vampires like the humans in Osaka, as a vampire named Locus comments on Mikaela's strength. Meanwhile, while the human girl offers blood to Mikaela as gratitude for saving her, Mikaela contemplates it and recalls how he became a vampire. 4 years ago, after you escaped, vampires raced to the bloodbath and were shocked to see that progenitor Farid had been shot. When they moved to kill the dying Mikaela, cruel Tepes, who is obviously a clone of Dracula, arrives and stops them. She dips her fingers into the pool of blood surrounding Mika and then licks it. She demands an explanation from Farid, who is actually still alive. Cruel does not buy Farid's excuse of getting shot because vampires, especially nobles, are quick enough to dodge bullets and senses Farid planned all this in order to let her Seraphs escape. She complains that one escaped and another lies dying. Farid asks if he should tell the Progenitor Council about this in an attempt to blackmail Cruel, since meddling with Seraphs is a serious crime in the vampire world. Cruel asks him to repeat himself, and when he does, she suddenly attacks him, kicking him with such force to send him hurtling across the room like a rag doll. She then proceeds to rip off his arm and crush his throat to the ground with her heel BDSM style. He surrenders, promising to not say a thing, and Cruel releases him after she seems convinced. After Farid leaves, Cruel approaches Mika and asks if he wants eternal life. He rejects her offer, but she smiles and tells him that he has no choice. Biting her lip deeply enough to make it bleed, Cruel then straddles and kisses our virgin side character like some long-lost lover, turning Mika into a vampire against his will. She uses the kiss to muffle his screams. Meanwhile, after bumping into another student and getting into a mortal combat deathmatch, Yu begins his first training as part of the Moon Demon Squad along with Yoichi and accompanied by Shinoa. When Guren introduces them to his other students, Yu, a true tough guy character, declares that he refuses to mingle with anyone, to which Guren promptly smacks him in the head like the little boy he is. When Yu is sent to his new seat, he once again meets the student who he bumped into and got into a fight with earlier, Shiho Kimizuki. The two began fighting again. Guren asks Shinoa why the two are still behaving badly despite both being taught how to make friends. Guren tells Shinoa to do her job more seriously before knocking the two out. Later, Kimizuki talks to Guren, asking to be given a cursed weapon right away and taught to quickly receive the benefits and medical operations needed for his sister after earning such a weapon and the status that comes with it. Guren tells Kimizuki he won't because Kimizuki is still not yet ready to control a demon. He shows his cursed weapon to Kimizuki and warns that he will kill Kimizuki once he gets himself possessed by a demon due to his unpreparedness. During the examination, after Shinoa acquires Yoichi as a training partner and ensures that Yu sees this, Yu and Kimizuki are forced to team together against training puppets. It ends up as a complete and utter failure because the two stubborn heads refuse to cooperate with each other, but the training is stopped when the supervisor, Sayuri, tells Kimizuki that his sister is in critical condition. Kimizuki asks to continue the exams, but Yu convinces Kimizuki to go to his sister. After much protest, Kimizuki finally decides to go see his sister with Yu coming with him because they are still chained together, and though he failed the examination, Kimizuki thanks Yu for convincing him to spend time with his sister. Yu then tells Kimizuki that failing the exams or being part of the Moon Demon Squad doesn't matter so long as he doesn't give up on finding a way to save his sister, and the two finally get along. Meanwhile, in the vampire city, Sanguinem, an announcer to an assembly of vampire nobles, warns of the humans amassing. Mikaela and Farid witness Cruel's declaration of war against the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. Cruel Tepes declares war against the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, sort of like how Hitler did his stating they have committed the sin of experimenting on the Seraph of the end. Mikaela Hyakuya swears to himself to rescue Yu. In a separate location, Major General Shinoa Hiragi begins a report at a meeting with the head brass, but Guren is asleep. Another soldier nudges him to wake him, and he stands up, yawning as if he's the verse Gojo, then asks if this boring meeting is over yet. Despite Shinya's attempts to make Guren behave, Guren voluntarily walks out while members of the Hiragi family, including Seishiro Hiragi, mock him. Leaving the meeting hall, which appears to be underground, Yu attempts to kick Guren and insists on receiving his cursed gear. Catching his foot, Guren easily embarrasses him, but yet decides to finally give Yu his cursed gear and send him out into the field, partially to keep him from being noticed by the Hiragi family. He knocks Yu out by kicking him on the head and walks away while stating that idiots are tiring. Yu returns to a cafeteria where Shinoa Hiragi is finishing her meal. She asks him if he skipped class by getting in a fight, and he denies it. Shinoa then congratulates him on being permitted to get an official demon weapon, which leads Yu to tell her not to ask about it if she already knows what he did. Elsewhere, Mika watches as a vampire plane disembarks from the underground city, and Farid Bathari leans against the guard railing a few feet away. Farid mentions that Mika can now save his precious angel, but Mika merely snubs him and walks away without giving any response. Mika walks through the streets of Sanguinem as children rest on street corners or in their homes. He wanders until he eventually reaches the house he shared with the other children from the Hyakuya orphanage. As Mika places his hand on the door, a child opens it from inside and sees Mika before freezing in terror. Mika smiles and tells him it is all right and moves to pat his head, but an older child pulls him back to protect him. Mika leaves, pausing at the end of the steps. He does not look back before heading back down the street again. In the classroom, Sayuri Hanayori returns the test papers to the students and claims the scores will have an impact on which level of cursed gear they receive. Yu sees his score of 0 and quickly tries to hide his shameful score, but Shinoa notices and steals it too quickly for him to protect. She jumps around the room with Yu, attempting to regain his paper. When he finally catches her, she reveals that her hands are empty. A group of students look at Yu's test score and marvel at the 0 and how everything was written with hiragana. Yu takes it back and shoves it in his pocket. Yoichi Saotome wonders if Yu might be better at English and Latin since he grew up in a vampire city. Shiho Kimizuki asks if he has shit in his head, and Yu asks him what scores he earned. Kimizuki reveals perfect scores in English, Latin, and Japanese spellcraft. When Yu and Kimizuki get into another fistfight, Guren walks into the classroom and asks why it is always so noisy. Seeing him, Yu demands a cursed gear, and Kimizuki would also like to know why Guren abandoned their classroom for 10 days. Guren asks Sayuri if those children might be ready to form a contract even if they have not completed their training, and she states that Yoichi is surprisingly more stable than the others. Guren draws his sword and pierces the classroom floor, flooding the room with a demonic aura. Most of the students collapse, and Sayuri has to use warding spells to withstand it. Yoichi and Shinoa bear it without difficulty, but Kimizuki and Yu struggle more. A pair of male and female students were also able to endure the power, but they collapsed shortly afterward. As they head to the ceremony room, Sayuri expresses her doubts about Yoichi having a strong enough heart for the demon. Guren asks if Yoichi is willing to give his life for revenge. Yu advises Yoichi to quit now, which Kimizuki agrees with. Yoichi experiences a flashback of his sister's death and considers that he cannot stop hearing it no matter how hard he covers his ears. He decides to continue. Guren explains the contract ceremony, and the three boys walk up to the weapons they choose. Yu draws a green sword. Thanks for joining us on another adventure, my fellow weebs. If you enjoyed this episode of Weebtoons, make sure to smash that like button and leave a comment below.